Hey, welcome back to Two Old Crows Homestead. It's Shelly here, and we're getting ready for this winter storm that's getting ready to come through. Randy and it started raining here, and I think after midnight the temps are supposed to drop really, really low. Something about negative 27 degree wind chill in the morning, which is kind of crazy. But so we went outside and put a bunch of extra hay in our rabbit cages. My hair's wet from going outside. And so anyways, I came back inside and I'm working on a couple stockings for two of our youngest grandbabies. And I thought I would bring you along and show you how to do that. They're super easy. This is what the finished product is going to look like. It's just a stocking like this. It's got a cuff that comes down over that. The back of it looks like this. Here's a red one that I made. I made these, gosh, I think I made these like back in 2020 maybe. But I've only got 5 of them, and I now have 7 grandbabies. So I need to make a couple more. So basically, what I'm starting with are these pre-cut 5-inch by 5-inch squares. And you pretty much just lay them out on your mat here and cut them down to these small 2.5-inch blocks. So you're going to measure, cut them in half this way, and you're going to get these little blocks just like this. I've picked out some Christmas colors, and so this is what I'm working with. Okay, so after I've cut my squares into my 5-inch squares into 2.5-inch squares, I've arranged them kind of randomly on my board here. So let me just explain real quick. This is one of the 5-inch squares. I need to make 2 stockings, and each stocking has 38 of these little squares, the 2.5-inch squares. So in order for me to get 2 stockings out of that, I had to use 19 of these 5-inch squares. Does that make sense? So if you're just making 1 stocking, you're going to need roughly 10 5-inch squares of whatever color scheme you want to go with. So this is going to be the long part of the stocking. And so you've got 4 across the top and 8 down the side here. Okay, get a picture of that right there. 4 across the top up there, 8 down the side, and then down here at the bottom where you have, this is like the heel of the stocking and the toe of the stocking, you've got 3 rows of 6 right here. Now what I'm going to do is take each one of these rows and I'm just going to start sewing them together. 1/4-inch seam allowance on each one. And I'm going to go through and sew all of these strips, and I'll be back in just a second and show you what that looks like. All right, I've sewed my first strip, 1/4-inch seam allowance on each one of them. And I've also sewed my second strip, and I just wanted to show you, if you do this while you're sewing these strips, it just kind of makes it easier. Go ahead and just press this seam with your finger. Just go through and kind of crease it with your finger. It makes it lay out better and you're able to line it up better. I just wanted to show you the difference between how this one's laying right now and how that one's laying. I don't have to get out my iron to do that. I'm just going to press it with my fingertip. And I'm going to go back and do this one, but it'll, when I go to start sewing these strips together, it'll make it easier to sew them together if I have these pressed down like this. All right, now I have all of my strips sewed. I'm checking to make sure that I don't have that my patterns are mixed up or my prints are mixed up. I don't have 2 prints that are exactly the same beside each other. And all that looks okay. So now I'm going to start sewing each strip to the next strip until I get my stocking made. Well, Randy just came in from moving the cars, and because we have a place where we park his car out in front of our property. And there's a tree out there that has recently been losing some big limbs, so we wanted to move that car out from under that tree. So, but he went out there. It's like 8:30 right now on, what is today? Thursday the 22nd. And it's starting to snow. So, all this is supposed to come in overnight. Anyway, so now I have my strips. I've finger pressed them and got all of that ready, and I'm going to sew this strip to the next strip. So I want to show you something. So to sew those, you know, like when you're sewing these, you're going to put your like sides together, right? So this is a good side, this is a good side. You want those to go together. And when you're doing that finger pressing thing, the best way to get these to line up is to have those seams go in the opposite direction, okay? For example, see this one right here, right there? I've got one seam going this way, and then the one on top is going this way. And that is going to enable me to put those seams right up against each other and sew them, and they'll fit like a glove. So it works best if you've got that seam allowance that you have on, you know, the ends. If you have them going in the opposite direction, it's very helpful. So I'm going to make sure that that is happening. Line them up. And this is one of those projects that this is actually a good beginner project for if you're wanting to learn how to quilt, how to make quilts, because this is, you know, you're piecing these 2.5-inch blocks together to make this stocking. But when I first started making quilts, I had a very dear friend of mine that taught me how to do this. It's been, gosh, it's 22 now. I guess it's been like 12 years ago. She taught me how to, you know, like tips and tricks and how to cut fabric and how to not waste fabric and all of that kind of stuff. But making quilts or doing this is very it's very geometric. It's very math heavy, I guess. And which is why I like it, because I like the you know, the symmetry of it and all of that kind of thing. And I was very particular about like my seams lining up, to the point that I would rip stuff out if it didn't line up correctly. And I mean, I will still do that, you know, if it's way off. But I'm telling you, each time I've made a quilt, each time I've done a project, I've learned something new, or I've gotten better at a skill. And now I'm just kind of like, it's okay if they're not perfect. It's okay. But this is those two pieces together. And even like right here, you can see that intersection is a little bit off. I'm okay with that. It's all right. So, but on the back, you can see my seams are going in opposite directions from the ones on the top, and it really just helps that to all fit together the way it's supposed to. So I recommend trying that. So now I'm going to add the next strip. So I learned how to I learned how to make these, or got the pattern to make these, from Missouri Star Quilt Company. If you want to learn how to make quilts, learn different patterns, get ideas for new patterns, all of that kind of thing, I highly recommend you check out their channel. Jenny at Missouri Star Quilt Company, her and her husband own the company. They have a YouTube channel, and oh my gosh, there's hundreds of videos on their YouTube channel. How to make all different kinds of quilts, wall hangings, tree skirts, baby blankets, stockings, Christmas stuff, ornaments. I mean, anything that you can think of that you would make out of fabric or make like, you know, like a quilt. They have so much stuff on there. It is such a huge wealth of information. And not only that, she does very, like, she breaks it down in the most simplistic way and makes it easy to understand. Some of the quilts that she has shown on there, I have actually seen them in places and sometimes purchased. Okay, I'm just gonna be honest with you. I buy quilt patterns and I struggle to figure out quilt patterns. I don't know why. Like, it takes me, and I feel like I'm an intelligent person, but I don't know. I don't know why I struggle with it. It's just hard to figure out how to do that quilt, depending on how it's written. I mean, I have gotten some quilt patterns or purchased some quilt patterns that I've been like, oh yeah, I'll figure it out pretty easy. Some of them, man. But to sit and watch somebody, like, she goes through, she'll have her material laying out there, she cuts the material, you watch her do that, and then they've got a camera that like hangs over her sewing machine and a camera that's right at the foot of her sewing machine, and she shows you step by step how to put the pieces together once you've cut them, and then how to take those blocks and make them into a bigger quilt. Just all the stuff. She does a really great job with that. So if you're wanting to learn how to make quilts, I highly recommend her channel. And then also they have, like, I'm on a mailing list for Missouri Star, and every day they do a deal of the day. And I'll tell you what, sometimes they got some really good deals on some fabric and, you know, notions and thread and all the stuff. But yeah, it's a really, really, really good resource. Go check them out. I'll put a link down below, and I'll put a link down below for this stocking, because even though I'm showing you what I'm doing, she's much better and giving you step by step what you need to make this stocking. It's not really like, this is my, what, 6th and 7th one, and so I kind of have it down, and sometimes I'm bad about, you know, just like thinking that people already know what I'm doing or something, and I don't get all the instructions in there. So if you want to make this, I'll leave a link in the description down below so you can go check her channel out, and you can get your tutelage from the expert. Okay, it's actually the next day because I just kind of got tired last night and wanted to go to bed. But before I went to bed, I did get one of the stockings done, just the top of the stocking. And then this morning I got up and I sewed the other one. And again, you need, there's 38 squares in this. So you can buy those little candy charm packs, or even, I can't think of what the next size up, but the 5-inch ones. If you had 38 squares of the 5-inch ones, you could actually make 4 stockings out of that. So, yeah. All right. So, I went through and ironed all of this down so it's all flat. And so the next step, making the sandwich. I don't have, the other stockings that I had have a beige back and a beige cuff up here. I don't have any more of that same fabric. It was almost like a linen kind of fabric. So the back of these are actually going to be this green material, and I think I'm going to make the cuff. I do have some beige. Yeah, I have some beige right there that I'm going to make the cuff out of, just so they kind of match the other ones a little bit. But the way this works is right now what I'm getting ready to do, I've got some quilt batting, a layer of that, just some scrap that I had laying around, and I've got enough to do the other one. And then I've got material, and what this is going to be, it's actually going to be, this material on the back is going to be the inside of the stocking. So this is the same color on both sides. If you had something that had a print or something, you would want to make sure that that print side was down, or the good side is down. And you want to make sure that the back of the fabric is facing up. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back and forth along each one of these seams and quilt this. And I'll work on that and be back in just a second. So I'm actually going to stick a few pins. You don't need a lot, but I'm going to stick a few pins in here just to hold this in place, to make sure it doesn't go around anywhere. Some people, you know, like to use a lot of pins. Some people just use what they feel like they need, which is kind of like what I do. And you don't need to worry, like even when you're cutting this back fabric and you're batting, it doesn't have to be precise. You don't have to cut. It just needs to be bigger than the stocking, because you're going to actually end up trimming this down quite a bit. So don't get sidetracked with measurements and all of that kind of stuff. Just, actually, I'm going to put these in the center of the block. All right. And then again, I'm going to sew along the seam. I'm going to use my foot as my marker. Just go along the edge of the foot and make a seam down the side. I'll show you what I'm talking about in just a second. So as you can see right here, the edge of my foot is going to be my guide down this seam. And you see my needle right here, it's going to make a width about, I don't know, a little bit, maybe half the size of my finger. I'll put the camera where you can see me sewing, but I just wanted to get up here and get kind of precise. See where the needle's at? That's where my seam is going to be, and I'm going to use my foot as my guide along the ditch of my stitching. I'm going to put my needle down in my fabric. So a little bit over here. Turn this again. And my foot is lined up right there with my seam again. Roll this up a little bit so it's not in my way. And I want to show you, that's what it looks like. So I'm going to do that on all of the seams. I'm going to do the ones that are going this way, the horizontal ones, and then I'll come back and do the vertical ones when I'm done with the horizontal ones. And you can just turn your fabric and just keep sewing and go back and forth, and it's not going to matter. I mean, you're going to end up sewing this and catching all of those threads and everything, and it's not going to come unraveled. But yeah, that's all you need to do. And if you see on the back side, it just shows your quilting back there. This is what's going to show on the inside of the stocking. Okay, right here, so I finished all the rows that are in the, the leg part of the stocking. And right here, I'm coming off on the toe. I am going to go ahead, I didn't sew it on this side because this is open, but I am going to go ahead and sew it on this side all the way down. And I'm just kind of gauging that, you know, eyeballing it, whatever. And then I'm coming back up this side. Take my pin out. It's always good to keep that stuff rolled up out of your way. That way it doesn't curve over and get into your seam on your side. Alright, so as you can see, I have a quilted, I have a quilted line on each side of my seam, and that's all the way down. You can see it on the back. Now I'm going to go through and do it this way on each one of them. And again, I'm just using my foot as my guide, lining it up with that seam and keeping my needle that far away on either side of the seam. Put my needle down on my fabric, turn it, a few stitches, needle down in the fabric, turn it. Make sure my foot is lined up with the seam, and I'm going back up in the opposite direction. So you can see right here, I have the two lines on either side of this seam and the two lines on either side of this seam, and I'm going to do my whole stocking like that. Okay, so I have all my quilting done. There's a line on each side of each seam. Now I want you to notice I didn't you don't have to close up this. Like, you don't have to do one across the top. You don't have to close up the side down here. It's all going to get caught up when you put the stocking together, so that's not really any big deal. Okay, right now we're going to cut off the excess of this stuff. And again, you can do this with your rotary cutter. It doesn't have to be exact. I mean, you can actually freestyle it with your rotary cutter. I'm just going to cut it with scissors. I'm just going to come along here, and it's okay if you cut off, you know, where you sewed up into that batting to turn your stitches around. It's okay if you sew that. It's all going to be cut off, or I'm sorry, not cut off, but caught up when you put your back on this, what is going to be the back of your stocking. It's all going to be caught up in that. So the reason that we have to cut off all of this excess is when we go to actually make the stocking, you need to be able to see where your stocking is at. So yeah, that's why we're doing this. And then also, we don't want our Christmas stocking to look like a Frankenstein boot, which is what it looks like right now. So we're going to round the heel and the toe on each end of the stocking. You can either freehand that, or you can take something and stick it on there and draw a circle, you know, or draw a, you know, a curve with a pen or something and cut it around there. I just freehand it. And I'm going to come around and do this side too. And then I'm going to freehand the heel. So now your stocking is going to look like that. Okay? All right. So now, and I have this one little place that I ran out of bobbin, but I think that's okay. However, on the back, it looks kind of janky. So as you can see, this is all my quilted stitching on the back of it. This is going to be the inside of the stocking. Okay? Now, get my other piece of green material. All right, so I'm going to leave this good side up. Okay, I'm going to put this on it. I'm actually going to turn this over so I can see it better, and I'm going to pin it because I don't want it moving around. And again, if you had a if you were using a fabric that had like a print on it and not just this solid color that I have that's the same on both sides, you would want your pretty side facing up, because when you flip the whole thing over, you want that pretty side sticking out. But mine is the same on both sides, so I'm going to just leave it like it is. But I want my pretty side of my stocking on the inside. Now I'm going to sew all the way around here. 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around my stocking. Don't close this off. You need this opening for your you know, for your stocking. But also, since this is at the top and this is going to be opened up and stuff stuck down in it, I'm going to do a back stitch on starting off and ending just to reinforce that a little bit. All right. So I'm going to get this down here on my fabric. most of the time you have like a button on your sewing machine to hit to do that little back stitch, which is what I just did. Now I'm going to go around. I'm going to come around here. And you can do this slowly, you can do however you want. I mean, I can sew fast on the straight parts, but when I come to the curves, I slow it down. Some people are really fast in the curves. It's all just whatever you feel comfortable with. But you want to keep the edge of the stocking lined up with your foot, and that's going to give you a good seam. As you can see, sewing around here, I'm catching all of those threads. See? It's going to secure all of those. Down here to the end. I'm going to back it up and come off. So I have my stocking sewed to my fabric. There's the outline of the stocking on the back side. I'm going to go through and take all my pins out. Now when I cut this, and again, you can just kind of freehand it, I'm going to go around and cut all of this extra fabric off of it. When I come around these curves, I'm going to cut some of this bulk out because you don't want a lot of bulk in your curves. It'll make it poochy. I know that's not a technical term, but it makes it kind of bunch. It makes it bunch and stick out. So I'm going to cut into that to get some of that bulk out of that, but you want to make sure that you do not cut into that seam line, okay? Let me see if I can get this around where I can show you. I'm just taking it down to about half of what it is. Let me just show you what I did there. See, it's just about half of what the rest of it was. But don't cut into your stitching. And I will do that on all of those curves just to get some of that bulk out of that for when I turn it right side out. It won't be so bulky. Now I'm just going to come across the top. All right, so there's my stocking. Now I'm going to turn it inside out. And there we go. There's that part of our stocking. All right, to make the cuff. So I want the cuff to be 4 inches, like that. It's about the width of these 2 blocks at the top. So I want the cuff to be about that big. I need to measure how many this is wide. So I'm going to lay it down on my cutting board, which has a ruler on it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, almost 8. So it's going to have to be double because you have a front and a back. So I have to cut my cuff 16 by 8 inches. And my cuff is actually going to be made out of this fabric. Okay, so I've got my cuff cut out and I want to, I didn't say this before, but I want to specify this. If I need an 8 by 16 inch cuff, 8 inch by 16 inches. However, to sew that, I need 16.5 by 8.5 because I want a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So whatever your piece needs to be, you need to add a 1/2 inch to it so you get that 1/4 inch on each end. Now I'm going to make sure that my cuff is really flat. I've got this one side over here that wants to be curling up. I want it to be flat and pressed. I did have a little ironing board that I would set up here on my table and use, and I have misplaced that thing. I have no idea where it's at. So I'm just putting a towel down on my cutting board and using that. All right, now I want to fold this in half, and I'm going to press a crease in it. There we go. So that'll be nice and straight when I turn it right side out on my stocking. All right. There's my stocking. Now I'm going to sew the ends of this together. This is going to be right on there like that when I'm done. And I'm going to sew the ends of this together. So one of the things that Jenny Doan at Missouri Star Quilt Company doesn't talk about, I like to put a, you know, like a loop so you can hang it on a nail. So basically what I do, I use this bias tape and I cut off a 10-inch piece. I sew the open side closed, so I'm just going to run it through here. Can do it in you know, the same color thread as your bias tape. To me, I mean, all of mine have white thread on them, so I don't really care. And then this is going to get put inside when I sew my cuff on my stocking, and then when I flip it out, this will flip out. Okay, so I've sewn the seam on my cuff, but I need to turn this inside out because when I sew it inside there and turn it right side out, I want this side out. Does that make sense? When you're doing something like this, you want your like sides together. I don't know if that made sense or not, but anyway, so I want my seam to go on the inside, and then I have my bias tape here that's going to be my hanger for my stocking. essentially I'm going to have 3 pieces that I'm sewing together, because this is the open side of my cuff. There's my bias tape that's going to be my hanger. And I'm going to back stitch just a little bit to lock it in. Alright. Now when you're going around this, you just want to take your time. Keep those 3 pieces lined up with your stocking. Well, I mean the 2 pieces lined up with your stocking. And you're just pulling it around. Pulling it around. I'm using the side of my foot as a guide. I'm going to pull my cuff out, fold it over. There's my hanger. Got a couple little threads here I need to get rid of, because I don't want those sticking out the top. My seam is at the back with my stocking. And there we go. There's the stocking. If you are, if you're interested in getting into learning how to quilt or learning how to make quilts, this is a super easy, quick, fun project that you can do that kind of gives you a taste of what quilting is on a small scale. But yeah. Now, I haven't been very, I'm not as thorough in my instructions. Maybe I am, I don't know. If you made quilts before, you probably have a good idea of what I'm doing here. However, if you feel like you need more instruction, go check out Missouri Star Quilt Company. I will put a link to the video on how to make this below. She goes through it step by step, how to do this, and does a really good job if you feel like you need more instruction and you want to make this. Otherwise, that's it. I hope you all have a very Merry Christmas. I hope you all stay warm. We everything's going good here on the homestead. Our rabbits are doing good, chickens are doing good. Pigs didn't want to come out and eat this morning, but I'm sure that they have by now. They're not going to stay in their hut all day and not eat. But everything's going well. Just be careful in these cold temps, and make sure you bundle up when you go out there. Make sure all your animals have food and water, and they're able to stay in out of the wind.
All right, everybody, have a Merry Christmas.
From Two Old Crows Homestead. Talk to you later. Bye. Yeah, God bless you. Have a great day.